guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I'm not here with Geeky Sparkles in this video. She will be back hopefully later today. She's very busy this weekend, but we're going to talk about the comic book industry. We're going to talk about Rob Liefeld. We're going to talk about those damn kids on our lawn. No, actually, Rob Liefeld has some very scathing criticism of the current state of the comic book industry. He's talking about millennials and Gen Z artists that he's had to fire because they're not pulling their weight. And we've been talking about kind of the decline of the mainstream comic book industry, for a couple of years now. We've seen it firsthand, and I've always told people my personal opinion on it. And I don't think everything being produced now is bad. I want to be clear about that. I think there actually is some decent stuff out there. But it definitely is a different industry than it was 15, 20, 30 years ago. And I think the difference from my point of view, again, is the money is not there. The money is not there. The people that are capable of making money, creating their own stuff, they're moving on to movies and video games and other things. They're not staying in the comic book industry. So what the comic book industry is left with, again, in my opinion, are a bunch of younger people who are not as professional as the people that came before them. Because, I always say it, when the money left comics, the professionalism left comics. I remember visiting the Bullpen when I was in high school, and this would have been the 1990s. And it was run like a magazine or a newspaper. In fact, there was very little difference between the Marvel Bullpen at 387 Park Avenue South and editorial offices that I would later work in when I worked for newspapers. It was a very professional setting, except for they had a guy dressed as Spider-Man running around giving tours. But other than that, it was like you wouldn't have known that this was a comic book publisher per se. It was like, this is an office. This is a New York publishing office. It's a very professional place. And of course, this is before social media. People had beefs with each other. It was nothing like it is now, where it's nonstop drama. Nonstop drama. In fact, a lot of the people working on comics now, I'm not as familiar with a lot of the newer creators because I don't read nearly as much Marvel and DC stuff as I used to. But when I hear their names, I associate them more with social media drama than I do with their work. I'm like, oh, so-and-so, yeah, I know about them because of their freaking ridiculous tweets, but I've never actually read any of their comics. I don't know if their comics are any good. I just know that they tweet ridiculous things. So Rob Liefeld is weighing in on it. And look, you don't have to like Rob Liefeld's work. I know a lot of people don't like his work. I personally love his work. I always have. In fact, Rob Liefeld is one of the reasons I got into comics. I wanted to make comics because I saw a younger guy making comics on MTV, getting commercials, and I associate it because I kept thinking to myself, like, comic book artists are older dudes, right? You have to be this tall to work in comics. And here we had a guy that wasn't much older than myself on MTV, making comics, making ridiculous money. And regardless of what you think of his art, I happen to like it because it's very unique. But regardless of what you happen to think of it, the dude made a lot of money. He made a hell of a lot of money back in the day. So let's talk about this. Speaking of independent comics, we're going to be launching one of our own from Clownfish Studios. This is Crimson Wren. This is the prequel to Shadowbinders. This is a story by Geeky Sparkles with a script by Geeky and myself and art by the amazingly talented Jose Garcia. It is a story we've been waiting 10 years to tell. This is one we almost got picked up by the mainstream, but we had things happen. We've talked about that in videos, but here it is. We're gonna produce something new. So if you want to support new IP from an independent studio, go to Indiegogo and sign up to get notified when we launch. It's going to be over 130 pages. It's going to be hardback. It's going to be a beautiful book. Absolutely beautiful book. Jose knocked it out of the park with this one. Very, very good stuff. So let's talk about this. This has come from Gabe Hernandez, and a lot of people were talking about. Rob Liefeld put on, I believe, Facebook. And Rich Johnston put something out there about it too. Of course he did. And he's trying to make it out like Rob Liefeld, some doddering old fool. The next generation, I got to be honest, had to cut ties with a number of new talent this past spring and summer. Several of these, the work will never see the light of day. I'm having it redone. The connective tissue is the age. These are individuals who are of an age between millennials and Gen Z. The talents I let go are terrible with directions. They love to argue and have zero accountability. No matter how polite I share, and I write every exchange as if it were to be shared in public, the reactions are a style and manner that I haven't encountered before. I go out of my way to give the benefit of the doubt, spoon feed the information and directions, but the snap and deflection is unlike anything I've encountered in 36 years. I've had a great track record breaking all manner of talent over 3 decades, but man, this is a whole new era, and I'm learning that I don't have the patience for the petulant behavior. Add to the fact that I pay top rates, I'm not looking for bargains, makes me wonder what will become of the industry over the next decade. We've already seen a preview of what's to come, Mr. Liefeld. I've been really fortunate to work with so many great talents over the course of my career. This is a whole new era that has a different standard of the dread entitlement. This is not untrue. And it's not everybody, but I remember when we were hiring colorists even 5-6 years ago, we had a hell of a time finding colorists because all they wanted to do was like Steven Universe fan art. I'm not kidding. They would say they couldn't get our pages done in time. We would set very liberal deadlines. We were paying page rates that were comparable to other indie publishers for a webcomic. You know, Boomer, IDW, or Dark Horse, we were paying rates like that, giving them plenty of time to get things done because I worked as a colorist myself for a number of years, and it was, you know, I understand the grind. I get it, you know. I didn't want to put somebody else in that position, but man, we had the same problem. They would complain that they were sick. They'd complain they couldn't do this. The dog ate my homework, whatever. And then you'd find out that they've been drawing like all kinds of Steven Universe fan art and Turtles fan art and all this other stuff, you know, and it was very, very frustrating. We had one that demanded to be paid after every page. We had another one that took us to task on DeviantArt because we weren't paying for samples. We're like, hey, send samples to this email address, and if we're interested, we'll call you. Well, because we weren't paying them for the samples that we had no intention of ever using, right? We wouldn't publish the stuff. It was a tryout. They were mad, and they were trying to, you know, get us canceled over on DeviantArt. Like, they won't pay me for a tryout. I'm like, if I paid everybody for a tryout, we'd be broke. Just send us links to your work. And they couldn't do that. And then also, if you're interested, we narrowed it down to about 6 or 8 people, I think. And we sent them a sample page. Said, if you're interested, color the sample page and send it back to us and give us your rates. And that's pretty standard, right? And they were mad that we weren't paying them for the sample pages. And I'm like, well, I can't pay everybody for sample pages because that's the entire budget for the damn book. God, seriously. You know, and it's like in some cases now, since then, I'll tell you the truth. There are people that if I know they can do the job, even if they are sample pages, I will pay them for those sample pages. In fact, inside baseball, and I hope Jose doesn't mind me sharing this, but I actually paid Jose for the rate we agreed upon for sample pages before we committed to him doing the entire book to make sure it was a good fit. Now, I knew Jose was amazing. I knew he was very, very good. But I was like, yeah, we'll have you do like 10 pages and I'll pay you for those pages. But just understand, we might not go beyond this because, we got to make sure the style works and everything worked out, But I'm saying if it's somebody that I don't know if their work is any good, I'm not going to pay you for that. I'm sorry. So I think we're going to see a lot of this. A lot of people dunking on Rob Liefeld. I don't think he's wrong. In fact, I've heard the same thing from other people who worked at Marvel at that time. I used to do a lot of panels at like Wizard World. They'd bring me in for stuff. And I got to know Danny Fingeroth pretty well. And he would complain about this to me sometimes. It's like, yeah, it's just like things were way different back then. I'd have other artists from that era, complaining about how unprofessional the comic book industry had become. And we're talking, this is only 5 or 6 years ago. There were people that worked in, and I'm not going to go naming names on artists or whatever, but they would complain. They were like, yeah, they don't call me anymore, but, I'm actually a professional. Like, I'm actually a professional. In fact, this one artist always shows up at a convention, basically in a suit, polished shoes. I mean, this guy is dressed for success. And he's not getting a call from Marvel. Instead, they're going to go hire some unproven weirdo Tumblr artist and then have to deal with all the drama on Twitter and shit like that. A lot of these guys don't even have Twitter. You're probably better off hiring people that don't have Twitter. But this is posted without much comment from Rich Johnston. There's a sketch from at last the 1948 show, which was popularized by Monty Python, originally titled The Good Old Days, now better known as Four Yorkshiremen, which begins with When I Was a Lad. You know, back in my day, Rob Liefeld concluded, I haven't encountered it in the field of comics until these past few months. Yeah, there's 7 comments. Let's see here. Imagine getting artistic notes from a dude that still can't draw feet. Maybe Liefeld needs to give his new talent some Levi's 501s. Dude's a parody of himself. I've never been a big fan of those righteous vegan Krishnas myself. It's about time somebody called them out. What? I too prefer the Monty Python sketch to Rob Liefeld's. Let me guess, he instructed them to promise a Kickstarter, never deliver it. Has he delivered that? Yeah, I don't know if he's delivered that. I remember he had gone for years and years and years without delivering that, but I don't know what's going on. He wants the pesky kids off his lawn. Look, I mean, people are going to dunk on him. They absolutely are going to dunk on the guy, but he has sold a shit ton of comics. In fact, when he's done, like Snake Eyes and some other books, more recently, he sold a shit ton of comics. He still sells comics. He still moves comics. And, it's just, it just shows the difference. I mean, this is a guy who was kind of the young Turk of the Image crew, the early Image crew. And he's even like, what the hell is up with this new generation of comic book artists, right? And I think we're going to see more of this. And frankly, what's going to happen is a lot of these people are not going to be working in comics because the comic book industry is fundamentally going to change, and it's going to pivot, I think, mostly to creator-owned stuff. And then, like Disney and Warner's will just outsource stuff to like overseas art houses, and that's going to be it because it's not worth the drama. If I were, well, we are kind of a publisher, but if I were like a Marvel and DC, I'd be like, you guys need to shut the hell up on Twitter. You're not doing us any favors. Or I'd be like, hey, you didn't turn your script in last Friday when it was due, but I see that you've got like 64 new tweets in the last 24 hours. What the hell is going on? Because from my point of view, if you can tweet, you can write a script, and we pay you to write a script. You don't get paid to tweet. I'd be pretty pissed too. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Pretty interesting. I think we're going to hear a lot more of the old guard coming out against the current crop of comic book artists. Not that it's going to do any good. I mean, I don't think Marvel and DC really give a shit at this point. They just slam the comics out and whatever. They're living on borrowed time, I think. Just an opinion. Gonna wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.